So I come tonight with a more of like an interpersonal topic, or I guess just me trying to look at a situation personal to me and try and kind of assess it and see where I may have gone wrong, and what I can learn from it, from the things that I can see in other scenarios, politics and other topics where I can't imagine feeling an extreme view or being as certain as people are. Using something in my own regular life where I think I do that, I think is a really interesting way to get that perspective, right? It's almost like a free glimpse, magical glimpse into what that looks like and feels like. I'm building off last night's video. It takes a bit of mental courage to do it, because you have to admit your faults and that you might be wrong, and something that you're really sure of, all the obvious reasons that we know, but it takes that mental courage. So I'm going to kind of push myself tonight and see how far I'm really willing to take it. So the scenario was relatively simple. So it was an argument with my wife, more or less. I guess I would call it an argument, but the context being, we're stuck in quarantine. My son's hair is getting long, not crazy long, but long. I needed to cut my hair. Can't bring him to a barber, so my thought was like, hey, I'll just cut his hair. We're not going anywhere anyway. We're stuck home for at least another month or two, whatever. There's no more school this year, so it's summer. Might as well just do it. I had a sense that my wife wouldn't like it because throughout the years, when it came to his hair, we've had disagreements before because she has like certain hairstyles, I like certain hairstyles for him, and we've always kind of compromised on it. And I even mentioned it the night before, just kind of jokingly, like, "Hey, I think I might shave his head tomorrow." And she didn't. She didn't take it well. Like she didn't. She didn't give any indication that she would be all right with it, if I'm being honest. But then this morning I did it, and so I'm trying to think of which approach to go first here. If I should kind of say how the situation played out and how I kind of acted within the situation, or the true feelings that I think had going on. I guess I'll start with what happened in the situation, and then I'll try and kind of reflect back on it. So she woke up, obviously, and did it while she was sleeping, and when she saw it, was angry, and bothered by it. And she doesn't hide her emotions well, so then it seemed like she just thought it was like an ugly haircut. So then our son got upset. It turned into a whole thing. But she was mad, needless to say. I tried to kind of talk her down, like laughingly, like, it's no big deal. Like, we're stuck in quarantine. He wanted to do it. What's the big deal? Like, I was very certain in my view at that moment, like that I was in the right, that there was no issue with me cutting his hair. Like, it may be slightly annoying and whatever and that type of thing, but in reality, I was totally right, right? There was no justification for getting upset. It's just his hair. Again, we're stuck home. I mentioned it, you had a sense I might do it and all that type of stuff. Because part of what she also said she was mad about was that I kind of just did what I wanted to do while she was asleep. And there was some, I guess, whatever, sneakiness or whatever in that. And then I won't get into this whole path of it, but she spoke to her mom, and her mom is much like her about his hair. And it seems weird to even, I mean, if I'm being really honest right now, just in the moment, just take a step back. It's almost uncomfortable for me to acknowledge the fact that my wife and my mother-in-law were genuinely that upset about his hair. Come to find out, there was more to it than that. But that was kind of my reaction in the moment, is what I'm getting at. Like, this is so absurd and ridiculous, I can't even give it the right attention. There's no reason for me to acknowledge and even consider a path in which I might be wrong. Which is really interesting, right? Because I've talked on videos within the last week, talking about shows I've watched or people's views on the coronavirus, and how some people feel like, hey, we need to stay locked down no matter what. I can't even imagine a scenario in which I would entertain a thought otherwise. So that's why I'm so certain I have such a moral high ground. And that's it, right? That's what I did. I did the same thing. I felt in that same vein. Now, if I want to make myself feel better, which apparently I do, because I'm going to say it, the situation, the complexity of it, the significance of it, obviously much higher in the coronavirus case. So I could probably make an argument to myself that, like, I let my guard down intentionally because this wasn't that important. It wasn't that big of a deal. But I mean, there may be a a tiny bit of truth to that, but really it's not an excuse, right? It's something that I think about all the time of how I can be a better father, a better husband, trying to improve myself and just the things I do and trying to live a more kind of honest and objective truth kind of driven life. So I failed, right? Simply put, I just failed at it. So I kind of responded in that way, made some jokes, saw family today, made some jokes about it, just trying to kind of make light of it, all the while knowing underneath, like there's an issue here. In my head, I probably started to turn it as to she was more the problem, right? The blame is actually on her. Cutting his hair, obviously, I believed was not a big deal, and I knew I was right in that. So why are we in a fight? Why is our son upset? Why is there's this whole issue? Well, it's because of her reaction, right? She's the problem. And then her mom on top of it, right? They're both clearly the problem. Had they not reacted so absurdly about a haircut, none of this would happen, which only then made me feel that much more validated in my view. But then also starts to generate some kind of anger and resentment, almost like a how dare you question me? How dare you try and make it as if I'm the problem here when it's so obvious that you're the problem? Which again builds in a feedback loop of feeling even more like now I'm mad at you. Now I feel almost defensive about the topic. So I'm going to go above and beyond to show you how right I am on principle almost. And you parallel this back and you see people who, I see people make posts that are so aggressive and so seemingly unnecessarily strong and spiteful almost, right? And again, that feels very much the same as the mindset I was in. It was on a much smaller scale, but that's how people may be feeling in these situations, right? I'm spiteful about this because how dare you try and imply we're the problem, that want to stay locked down and save lives. We're the problem. We're the only ones that are doing this right, and that kind of vengeance almost in it. So that's kind of the mindset I got into. And it was not heading down a good path. We were having obviously not a great day all day, and there was tension. Our son continued to feel it, so he kind of went through it. So at one point, our son went outside. I was making dinner. She was sitting at the table. There was that kind of obvious tension. If anybody's ever seen kind of the Nate Bargatze comedy special, he talks about when you're in a fight with your wife in kind of a small house, and it's so awkward because you're trying to make pretend, you're not mad. It's just, you get real formal, all that stuff. Anyways, so it's kind of in that vein. And I think I took a page out of the playbook of fake it till you make it, right? I was feeling all the things I was just saying. But if I'm going to give myself maybe one more thing of credit, I think I already gave myself one. I knew that was wrong. Even though I wasn't really fully getting into it and like defeating it in the proper way, I had a general sense like, hey, this is heading down a bad path and I'm not doing everything I could be doing to try and address it. So almost in a fake it till you make it mentality, I said like, hey, I want to learn. I want to learn more. I want to understand more. Let's talk about this in a meaningful way. I really want to understand why you were so upset because I'm genuinely surprised that you were that upset. So I won't get into all the details of what we got into, but she explained a little bit more about her views on the hair and kind of acknowledging it's a bit irrational, but in some ways it's very rational. It's there's so many things as a mother with her being sick and with multiple sclerosis and everything that she can't do. She doesn't have control over. She can't do the typical motherly duties. And I guess in her mind, kind of his maintenance and hair and style and some of that falls onto the mom, or at least that's how she always thought of it. So that one in particular was one that was really core to her. It was important to her that his hair somehow reflected, the style she thought, at least up to a certain age until he decides for himself. And I never thought of it that way. And even if I had a glimmer of that, I would just dismiss it that it was so silly and superficial and, you just care about his hair and you're being selfish and all these things. When meanwhile, I was doing, I wasn't really listening. I wasn't really understanding that it wasn't really about the hair so much as it was the situation she's in. And we ended up kind of getting to more of a common understanding there. And what was really cool about it was it helped us resolve the issue almost on the spot because we came to an understanding. And I was able to genuinely apologize and be like, hey, listen, I saw it from a completely different lens. I thought the context of the quarantine would mean you would kind of understand that and be like, in a normal circumstance, I never would have cut his hair like that. But with the quarantine, you would understand. You'd be like, well, not that big of a deal. It's not like he has school tomorrow or anything like that. But she didn't see it through that lens, right? So we had different lenses. She had kind of this identity issue at play. So hearing that, I was able to genuinely apologize and say to her, like, hey, next time, just tell me. Like, you could just tell me what it is. We don't have to play games. And we ended up, I'll probably bring this up in a different video, getting into a conversation about kind of the role her mom played into it. And I've had lots of issues with that in the past. And I think we got to somewhat of a better understanding around that as well. So again, cool thing being, it allowed me to apologize, but then it almost opened her up more to when we brought up the topic about her mom. She was much more open to engage in that and acknowledge some things maybe she hadn't in the past because she saw me truly do it. So again, this kind of all happened tonight, and I know I'm already at 10 minutes, so I don't want to go too much further. I'll probably dedicate another video on this topic, but happy, felt good in terms of how it played out for sure. But want to dig more into the learnings about when my mindset was in the wrong place, like what that empathy and what that feeling of what the other side might or other people might feel like when they're in the moment, how you might help to address it, right? That's kind of the key next step. Now that I kind of see some of the things and I can empathize, figure out what might have worked for me in that moment to cut it off sooner or get to a better place quicker or more efficiently.